What's up guys, Munith here and I'm back for another video. This time we're covering another OLT series, this one between Sam and Mob for Swiss round 1. I know round 2 has already gone up, but I've been a little bit slow because I've been on vacation and doing stuff. Anyways, getting on to the actual video and series. Looking at these two teams, we've got Mawile Rotom bulky offense from Sam, pretty standard. This 6 was originally made by Tala and then edited prior to the game to change Mawile from SD Thunder Punch to SD Knockoff. And Mob is using a pretty passive Sia Megalodios balance that looks to just stack up hazards and wear down the opposing team until either Latias or Gliscor can win, if that is SD Gliscor. Now starting off, Sam leads with Heatran as Mob leads with Clefable. He goes and just Magma Storms into the Gliscor, and he's all the way down to 33. So here, we're thinking like, Sam obviously doesn't want to risk getting Earthquake turn 1, so Rotom is pretty risk-free, and Mob should definitely roost so that because if he doesn't roost here, then next time Heatran comes in, it either forces Mob to sack Toxapex or Latias, assuming that the Toxapex isn't Shed Shell, which is very unlikely. And Mob Earthquakes on the Rotom, so now he's in a terrible position against Heatran. And now he switches out to Toxapex as Sam goes for the Hydro Pump here. And now Mob goes for the Baneful Bunker. And interesting to note that he didn't get Black Sludge back after the Hydro Pump, which means he's probably Damage Berry or even Z-Toxic for that matter. But anyways, it's kind of weird because for one of the bigger benefits of Baneful Bunker is that combined with Black Sludge, you do a much better job warding off against flinches from regular Greninja. But, his choice. And now he clicks Scald on the switch to Heatran. And see here, this is exactly what I was talking about. He has to go into Latias, let it get toxic, and this thing is basically dead with toxic on it. So now, he's gonna toxic this turn. And if I were Sam, I think, yeah, Gren is a solid play here just because Heatran's pretty valuable for checking Pex and Jirachi. So Greninja's a fair play. Rocks would be a little bit greedy, but also not that terrible a play. Then he doubles into Mawile on the double the Toxapex. He Swords Dances in the face of the Toxapex on the Scald crit. Does not get burnt, thankfully. And now, here, this is where changing the team really came in handy for Sam, because this team usually runs SD Thunder Punch Mawile, so Mob was like, I do not want to get my Toxapex O-code here, and I'm not really getting any utility out of bunkering. In fact, if he Swords Dances as I bunker, I'm pretty screwed. So he goes into the Ferrothorn on the knockoff, and it does 87, I think. Okay, and then, obviously knocks it out the following turn. That's pretty huge because now he won't get any spikes up against Sam, and that's one less thing to stand in the way of a late game Ashgren. Now he goes into Clefable. Going Clefable into Mawile like that indicates you're obviously fast. A, you're obviously faster, and B, you've got to move to Oko it. If I were Sam, I probably would have just gone into Tangrowth here, and like knocked off, etc. I suppose there's the off chance that he's Calm Mind Z, and that could be a misplay, but Calm Mind Z usually isn't faster than Mawile, so I think it's worth the risk. While not sacrificing HP on Heatran, and he gets paralyzed here, which is pretty huge. And now, he's just wearing away at the Heatran, getting paras, and now Sam decides to, whatever, that thing got paralyzed. I'm just gonna go into Tangrowth, knock this off. And then, as he gets Fire Blast, he gets parried, so he can't even knock off the Clefable. He has to switch to Rotom on the Moonblast, and he's just gonna pop the Z Water here, and that does 69 to the Clefable. He dies to Moonblast. Now he can go into Greninja here, And if that's like, and 69 is a lot of damage to a Clefable. I don't even think that's max HP now that I'm looking at it. Which probably means that Greninja's Dark Pulse is like either a roll to kill and a 2 KO for sure, and Surf slash Hydro Pump obviously one-shot it. So he goes into Greninja thinking like, in this situation, he's definitely gonna be forced out because with Heatran paralyzed, Tangrowth paralyzed, etc., he has chances to either soft boiled up or like do some more breaking, and it's faster than Mawile, so it's far from useless. And he decides, let me go into Jirachi. It takes a Dark Pulse, and on top of that, like it's not really checking anything on his team. So does he just elect to protect and then either protect spam or just sack? No, he goes into Toxapex here. I forgot that was at full. Anyway, I actually remember the game a bit incorrectly, but anyways, this is where I'm talking about that lack of Black Sludge really hurting, because he's not getting any passive recovery on these turns, and he can't couple Black Sludge with Baneful Bunker to do anything either. And he switches into Mawile on the Toxic, which was a great play, and he clicks Knock Off here, knocks off the Payapa Berry, which indicates he's probably some... which indicates, you know, this isn't, this is probably just Payapa Toxic for Volk, and while I don't think that's a terrible set, I think Bunker doesn't really make sense there. Anyways, U-turns out with the Lando versus the Gliscor, goes Greninja. Now this is a very huge turn, because basically, if he surfs into the Toxapex, the thing recovers, looks very difficult for him to win with a burnt Mawile and everything parried. If he Dark Pulses into this as it Earthquakes, that's also a lost game, obviously. So it's sort of a 50-50, but there's obviously like 3 other mons that Mob could pivot into as potential plays, and Sam could always double himself to avoid having to make the decision right here. But he elects to just go for the Surf, predicting the stay-in, as Toxapex on Dark Pulse isn't even a guaranteed win, and he just would like to... I guess he just wanted to take the potential win there while he had it, and then he just sacks Mawile to the well, tries to, rather, and then and then on the Clefable he just play roughs there, and the Mawile goes down on the knockoff into recover. Now next turn he with the Gliscor dead, Earthquake spam is super free for him, as the Lottie is paralyzed. Or Toxic, my bad. Now here he's either forced to Thunder on the choke or click Roost. And so going Heatran, there's a mid-level pivot was perfectly fine, solid play. Tangrowth was also acceptable, obviously. He ends up getting Rocks up, which limits like pivoting shenanigans between like Latias and Toxapex, which is obviously good. Now here, I would have gone into Greninja on that specific turn, because like at that point, if it lets itself die, he gets swept by Scarf Lando, so it's not even a concern of like, oh, you're letting Pex win. But you know, I understand like he doesn't want to risk the potential Pex burn. But like a bunch of recovers combined with paralysis could be problematic. And now that he Magma Storms and does 43, which obviously means he's Spadef, as it should be on this team. He goes Landorus on the Clefable and just Earthquakes here. I think Mob's play there was probably to sack Jirachi, go Toxapex, fish for the burn so that Clefable could win that way. But I just don't think that was very likely. But either way, at this point, Lando plus Greninja wins very easily. And, you know, well played by Sam, muscling past the annoying hacks with the Clefable, getting the Thunderbolt full para 2 times in a row against the Heatran, and full parrying the Tangrowth when it would have knocked it off, and either scouted to see if it was Life Orb or Z, though, if my head calcs are correct, that did look like life orb damage. Now moving on to the next game, Sam is using, I believe this is fairly similar, if not the same six, as the Team Blunder brought in SPL. It's like a Como Zapdos Sand that is like just that has like an offensive Como to, put some pressure on the opposing team along with some good speed control as provided by Sand. And Mob's using a T-Tar cart Feeny Torn Sand that's a lot more typical for T-Tar teams, as it has that like fallback water to pivot into and like the more familiar parts of these kinds of structures. And now Mob leads off with Kartana as Sam leads off with Zapdos, predicting that well. And turn 1, Sam reveals Volt Switch on the switch to Tyranitar, which is very good for Sam in the fact that it's Volt Switch Zapdos, because that means he can chip the Tyranitar without any risk of getting Pursuit trapped or him getting rocks up or anything of that sort. So he's going to be able to get a lot more momentum and use out of Zapdos this game than he would be able to if it was discharged with Thunderbolt. He goes straight into Como. It reveals leftovers, so it's a bit different from the Team Blunder used, I guess. So if it's lefties, that means it's definitely rocks, probably like Toxic Protects, Close Combat. Other fillers could be like Earthquake, Drain Punch, Flamethrower, depending on the team. I don't think you'd really have Flamethrower on a team with Zapdos, but you get my point. He gets up his rocks on the switch to Feeny. When Feeny's paired with Torn, it's usually Nature's Madness, Stabs, Taunt. And he goes into Tangrowth on the Feeny, obviously, just to absorb the potential Moonblast or whatever attack, because it should be, it looks like it's a Solvest on this team, at least. As it probably should be. And then he switches back out to Tyranitar on the Defog, and he Megas on the U-turn, and clicks Ice Punch on the Scarflanders. Now, this is very interesting because he's a Mega 4 attacks, Mega Tyranitar, which is a cool set. Gives you a ton of room to break past balanced teams. He goes out of Tangrowth, back into Como, gets the rocks up on the switch to Feeny. So now, he has his own rocks to make, and now that, Mob has his rocks up, it's not quite as risk-free to defog, and then he pivots Tangrowth the same way, and then just clicks Knockoff on the switch to Heatran, which is pretty huge for his Zapdos and his Kartana for that matter, as it's probably Scarf Cart on this team, and Heatran being knocked makes it much easier to set up for cleaning. And he protects on the switch to Kartana, and then goes back into Feeny as he hits Drain Punch. Personally, I would probably go for Close Combat on this team, because if you look at the threats Como is meant to beat, you got Heatran and Greninja are the two that pop out to you. Close Combat does significantly more to both targets, and it's near Okoing Kartana, whereas Drain Punch, sure, it gives you some passive recovery, but with Protect plus leftovers, you're getting a fair amount as anyways, and it just isn't worth passing up on the important KOs you get from the Close Combat. But anyways, he does that. We go through the same Protect sequence. As here, exactly what I'm talking about comes into play. Only does 55, meaning that this thing can switch out after getting its kill and come back in later, which is very annoying for Sam. But obviously here he goes into his own Kartana, fires away with Knockoff on the switch to Torn as he gets knocked off, and now he's going to be switching into Excadrill as Mob doubles out to Tyranitar, probably predicting like a Zapdos or something of that sort. And Sam decides, let me just remove this thing with Z Corkscrew Crash, as if it's Mega, I don't even kill it with Iron Head, and it's just not worth like dealing with that. And he gets an Earthquake off on the Feeny, and Mob gets a crit. That is a very important crit because Excadrill normally does not normally does live Scald, my bad, from Feeny at that range, obviously it was gonna not clean house unnecessarily because of the what do you call it? Because of the Torn being able to like regen off, but it probably was gonna get several kills from that point on. Um, and now he goes into Kartana here, obviously, to just like get a hit off. Clicks Leaf Blade, no risk at that point. Mob goes into Heatran, but with Misty up, Como is a super free switch and can't be burnt, can't be toxic. Mob smartly doubles into Torn, and knowing that he's a toxic Como, he U-turns out. As Sam goes into the Zap, Mob does not get static parried, which is pretty big. And now Zap heals up with its lefties and just volts out on the Feeny Sack. Once again, he can just go right back into Kartana, force Mob to basically pick one here. On the switch to Torn, he just Smart Strikes, as he should. And now Heatran dies to either 2 Smart Strikes or Rocks plus Smart Strike next time it comes in, which is pretty big. And then here, Sam's just posturing with Como, basically. Clicking Toxic on the predicted defog for the Heatran, as I mentioned earlier. And that doesn't work out, and he just Drain Punches, because at this point Sam doesn't really have to like make any wild predictions or anything. He's just got to play within himself, and that will likely lead to a victory on his part, as he just clicks Toxic and Rocks on this turn. And Mob knows that, I'm gonna, Mob's thinking, like, I gotta cane this thing or something. And obviously Sam's either gonna will protect or Rocks or something. And Mob knows, like, at this point, he's lost to Scarf Kartana plus Zapdos plus Tyranitar plus Como. Like, just the combination of things that checks his last two is just impossible for him to beat. And, admittedly, this was a pretty tough matchup for Mob, but the Game 1 matchup was much worse for Sam, and he probably would have lost that if Mob didn't sack his Gliscor to Greninja at the end. But looking at this series, Sam played very well, knowing his outs and making sure he played them to the fullest. There were some situations where he could have played more aggressively or, like, limited chip with, like, little air quotes micro plays, where things such as Swords Dancing again on the Toxapex, on the bunker slash switch to Pharaoh, but obviously you risk him burning as USD again, which is a huge issue. But it's not necessary. But it's not in his best interest to just sack his pecs like that, so it's not a bad play, and obviously he would have taken a little less chip there, which would have given it more leeway to